This reading comes from Chris Perkins' Dungeon Magazine series, The Dungeon Master Experience, in which Chris gives excerpts of wisdom and lessons he's learned from many years of running games. If you're interested in reading it for yourself, you can find a link down in the description along with links to where you can find the music used in this video, which is a product of Critical Role's Scanlan Shorthalt Press. Man Down. Wednesday night. I was sad when Trevor Kidd, one of our players, told me he was leaving Wizards of the Coast. He was moving to Iowa to be closer to his wife attending med school. Trevor's character, a dragonborn paladin named Razgar Vermund, had an amazing story arc tied closely to the events of the campaign, and I had big plans for him. Now all of my plans were suddenly dashed, which forced me to come up with a new, better plan that would allow Razgar to exit gracefully as well as propel the campaign and the other characters forward. Here's everything you need to know about Razgar to understand the point of this article. He was born into the noble caste of Dragavar society, but his family was disgraced by powerful rivals, House Irazaxis and House Norikti. Razgar ended up adopted by the Temple of Bahamut, while his younger brother Naxagoras ended up on the streets. Razgar became a dutiful servant of Bahamut and sworn defender of the faith, eventually joining forces with the party in order to help Dragavar Empire find its missing emperor, as well as protect it from various looming threats. Once in a while he crossed paths with Naxagoras, who had fallen in with a bad crowd and sworn a vow to Tiamat to avenge his family's disgrace. On multiple occasions, Naxagoras' thirst for revenge placed him and his brother in direct conflict with the two noble families responsible for their father's death and mother's suicide. Meanwhile, Razgar tried everything he could to persuade Naxagoras to abandon his oath to Tiamat. Over the course of several levels, Razgar obtained a solid lead concerning the Emperor's whereabouts, but other quests and his brother's antics continually got in the way. When a window of opportunity suddenly opened and Razgar persuaded his companions to accompany him to the island of Salim, where the wreckage of the Emperor's flagship had been sighted. To the other players in the group, Trevor's character was the friendly face of the Dragavar Empire, an honorable dragonborn through and through. He reminded them that the Empire wasn't as corrupt as the DM sometimes made it out to be. Trevor's departure not only meant the group was shrinking from 8 to 7 players, but also that the party was losing its moral compass. And I was losing not only a great role player, but also a character whose ties to the Dragavar Empire fueled a lot of great storytelling. When a player leaves the group on good terms, my DM skills are put to their greatest test, for it's my job to make sure the departing player's final session is an amazing, emotional experience for the whole group. In a long-running campaign such as mine, every player deserves an appropriately spectacular send-off. To deny a glorious finale would have been negligent and disappointing, and a good DM never leaves the players feeling disappointed. In January, I co-hosted a DM seminar at D&D Experience in Fort Wayne, Indiana. One of the seminar attendees shared an anecdote from his campaign in which he had one player leave the group and another player join in the same session. In his final session, the departing player sacrificed his character to save the life of the new player's character. This simple act of heroism created a bond between the new character and the remaining party members, all of whom were touched by their comrade's noble sacrifice. I practically wept at the ingenuity of it, even though the outcome had been somewhat orchestrated by the DM and the departing player. I wanted something equally impactful. Due to forces beyond my control, I had only one game session to wrap up Razgar's story and plan a graceful exit. The day before the game, I made up a list of all of Razgar's unresolved plot hooks and quests. 1. Find the Emperor and return him safely to the throne. 2. Deal with House Irazaxis and House Norikti. 3. Reconcile with Naxagoras. All 3 of these quests were originally meant to carry Razgar through the epic tier, and I had spaced them out accordingly. I ended up discarding my original plans and instead focused on how I was going to tie up Razgar's story in 4 hours of game time. Shortly before the game, in a moment of subdued panic, I made a list of events that would happen during this farewell session. 1. The heroes find and rescue the Emperor and his entourage, who are trapped in stasis on the island of Nithsalim. 2. The heroes escort the Emperor back to the capital and reward them. They are named princes of the Empire and given parcels of land. They witness firsthand the impact of the Emperor's sudden glorious return. 3. Upon hearing of the wrongdoings inflicted upon Rhaegar's family, the Emperor awards Rhaegar the estates of his rivals and tasks him with bringing the Iraxis and Nericti leaders to justice. Rhaegar and Anaxagoras confront their hated enemies, one of whom wields their father's sword. Retrieving the stolen sword is the symbolic gesture that finally unites the two brothers. Anaxagoras' bloodlust is satisfied, and Rhaegar gains a powerful friend in the Emperor. Originally, the Emperor wasn't on the island. However, I now decided to make him a prisoner of the island's overlords, a pair of wizards named Nith and Salim, who used magic to disguise themselves as purple dragons. The sisters' political agenda is pure contrivance, and beyond the scope of this article. What's important is that they live inside a flying citadel that, in the course of the evening, rose out of a volcanic caldera, flew across the open water, and plunged into the sea, nearly wiping out the entire party. A mass fly spell cast by Rodney Thompson's character saved the day. At 9 p.m., 3 hours into the game, I realized there wasn't enough time to run separate combat encounters with House Iraxis and House Nericti, so I decided on a whim that Kafira Nericti would execute her entire household and take her own life instead of allowing an enemy to spill her blood. Moreover, rather than allow her family's fortune to fall into Rhaegar's hands, she would use it to hire assassins to avenge her death. Instead of posthumously hiring them, I suppose that makes her prehumously. In any case, how's that for setting up a future encounter? That left Taizero Iraxis. I don't usually let NPCs steal the limelight, but I did allow Rhaegar's brother to score the final blow against the evil dragon-born noble and reclaim his father's sword. As for Rhaegar, he decided to spare the life of Taizaros's daughter, Taishan, and even allow her to retain a small portion of her father's estate. One final noble act brilliantly improvised by Trevor in the moment. Lessons learned. Sometimes when a player leaves, the campaign stalls. The onus falls on the DM to make the most of it, to reassure the remaining players that the campaign will go on, and that it's still full of surprises. As much as I'll miss Trevor, his departure has already propelled the Wednesday game forward. What will happen now that the Emperor has returned, I wonder? Will Kafira Nericti make good on her threat to avenge her family's destruction? How will the other players fare without their faithful moral compass? I see dark times ahead, but only time will tell. Here's what Trevor's sudden departure taught me. 1. Nothing's more important to a campaign than the stories of the player characters. 2. Improvisation is key to survival, both for the DM and for the campaign. Next week, I'll talk about maps, which I love, and share a few DM mapping tricks. The Best Villain Ever contest was well received, so expect another in the not-so-distant future as well. Until the next encounter. I want to thank all of you who've made it to the end of this video. If you're interested in learning how to introduce players to your campaign and character creation, I would suggest no better than this video here, Point of Origin. Thank you, and peace!